PlayStation 4 HDMI port replacement. This is an SAA001 board out of the CUH10 model of the PlayStation 4. I have this board preheated on the tablet heat pad at 75 degrees. And I'm going to use regular 6337. I'm going to add regular 6337 solder to the existing lead-free solder. The existing lead-free solder is not only has a higher melting point, but the board itself is very thick, very heavy, and designed to dissipate a lot of heat. So I'm going to try to minimize the amount of hot air I use. One, because I don't want to damage plastic components here. Do not want to disturb any soldered components there. And on the opposite side of the board, again, I want to try to avoid damaging the plastic component. And underneath this shield is the HDMI encoder IC. So I'm trying not to overheat that. So with this preheated to approximately 75 degrees Celsius, that should give me a little bit of a boost in temperature delivery. And additionally, you can kind of see that this is a damaged HDMI port. And it's pretty common for these because the OEM ports do not have any reinforcing backing behind these pins. So I'm going to push these pins back into their places so I can access the leads and landings on the board itself. So just going to have those pushed out of the way. And to introduce some flux to this lead landing interface, as well as to the anchor points. All right, now I have the board propped up. Should be able to see these leads and landings, have them all fluxed up nicely. All right, with my 6337 solder, I'm going to introduce it to the leads and landings with a heavy tip. This is a D2.4 tip. I should be able to get a nice big bead of solder in here. Pretty much just want to have a solid bead of solder covering up all these leads and landings. Make sure you get the corners. The corner pins are easy to miss. All right, with my leads and landings fully saturated with 6337 solder, I'm going to now move into the anchors. Just do the same thing. Introduce a very generous amount of 6337 leaded solder to the existing lead-free. Using this fat tip, should be able to deliver quite a bit of heat. Should be able to see the solder in this back anchor should transition from a dull gray to a bright shiny color once the leaded solder is added to it. Alright, so that is nice and saturated with 6337 solder on the top side. I'm going to check the back side to see if there's any difference in appearance. And there is a little bit, so I can see that some of my solder has flowed through. Mainly in this area, it's piled up higher here than it is over in these areas. So what I can do in this case is continue this introduction of leaded solder. So add some flux to help facilitate the merging and blending of the two solders. So we should start to get that transition in color. And I have a pretty big bead on my tip that I can work with. All right, so I'm pretty confident in my alloy is now a lower temperature than the existing lead-free. All right, so I'm going to check one last time my leads and landings, make sure they're nice and saturated. And double check my anchors over here. I can see a nice silver or bright shiny wetting or liquefaction. And double checking over here, I mean double checking these corners, these very far outside pins. They do tend to hide and be overlooked. Alright, now with that I'm going to flip the board back over. And I'm going to apply hot air station, about 400 degrees C, full airflow. I'm going to direct my hot air not so much straight down, but just a little bit of an angle. Just so I can direct that heat on the leads and landings, or so I can direct the heat on the anchors. The heat that transfers through the board should liquefy the leads and landings. You see I'm getting some melt. My anchors are starting to melt. That heat should transfer through. drops off. Now, without giving it any real force, if I was twisting and prying and pulling, I have more of a chance of pulling a pad. Heating from the backside and kind of letting gravity take over. Nudging these anchors occasionally just to kind of get a feel for how liquefied the solder is. You can then get an idea of at what point it should start to fall off. Now, looking at these anchors, they look pretty clean, and the leads and landings all look to be intact. Now, with that, I can take my clean tip and just gently swipe away the solder that's on there. And checking the back side, you can see my anchor holes here are not overflowing, so I don't have a lot of cleanup to do there. Now, from this point, I'm going to clean up the landings and reinstall a new charge port.